Hi, everyone. Welcome to More Than Numbers Live, a data show focused on turning data teams from support functions into engines of growth. I'm Ollie Hughes. I'm one of the co-founders of Count.co. We're a canvas-based BI tool trying to move people away from the dashboard factories into their organization's problem solvers. This week, I'm really pleased to welcome Jimmy Mogrip from Podimo. He is the global director of insights and analytics at Podimo. And this is going to be an amazing opportunity for us to hear how a data team, a data leader actually focuses solely on driving insights which drive their organization forward and doesn't deal with any dashboards, or at least we're going to find out if he does or not. Jimmy, thank you so much for being part of the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Pleasure to be here.
I should say that Podimo in itself is actually a subscription-based podcast service for audiobooks and podcasts. You have over, I believe, over 1 million active users. So this is probably your first or many podcasts you do. Tell me.
No, actually, this is the first time I'm actually recording in our very own small podcast studio. We have a bigger one as well, so it is a little bit daunting for me, but I'm up for the challenge.
You certainly look the part. I gotta say, I love the fact you've got like a Podimo kind of a microphone muffler as well. It's absolutely amazing to see. So you definitely look very much in the right place at the right time. So. Look, we're going to dive in. We're going to work with you on like what your team does, how your team operates. I think it's one of the, you have, in my view, one of the best roles in data, that you're doing the thing that everyone coming into data wants to do, which is to use data to drive insight, which moves the business forwards and solving problems. And I think you have that in spades. So we're going to dig into that more as part of the show. But before we get there, my opening question to you is, tell me the data tool that you fell in love with, the data tool that you first realize that data was the thing. Tell me, have you got a story we can get into to help us understand your background a bit?
Yeah, that is a very fun question, because what I should mention is I never planned to go into data science or analytics or anything from the get-go. I have studied behavioral sciences, understanding why people behave the way they do, and then I added a master in communication to that as well, which was what I started with at one point in time, as an actual communicator at a bank, a small bank in my hometown of Helsingborg. And what actually happened, this was more the startup vibe. So one day, my manager at that point, every one of the more senior people, they were doing multiple things at the time. So yeah, he was like salesperson, communicator, and head of IT in one go, basically. He just taps me on my shoulder and said, "You don't have anything to do today." I have lots of things to do, but you're my manager and I'm junior, so I can't say that. So no, I'm fine. What do you need me to do? Oh, we have purchased this tool. It's called iMarketer. It's an analytics tool from a British company called Experian, and we're having a full day training of it. And I think you should probably be in it. That was okay. It was from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And what actually happened as I went into that meeting, as a person who wanted to be a communicator. I left it as a person who was dead sure that he wanted to work with analytics. Because how it actually operated was, it was like a GUI based upon an SQL base. So as a bank, you had transactions, you had accounts, and then you had users. And the way that you can drag and then see, I was sitting there like, this is like real data of behaviors that you can actually use. And it was so cool. It was so intuitive in its ways would build up. And I just said, like, this is what I want to do. All those years at uni for nothing. Now I'm going to do something else. So
I've got to say,
I had that opportunity as well. So
I mean, it feels like you've knitted everything together really well, because you did behavioral science and communication. You now work in data for a communication-based audio podcasting company looking at user behavior. So I mean, like, feels like you've got the perfect triumvirate of all the things you love.
I do think so. It has, sometimes the stars are just aligned in the best possible way. I don't know what I can say. I had a lot of luck.
One of the things I love, we're going to dive into more on exactly what you do and how you love it in a bit more detail. But before we dive into exactly what you do and what your team does, can we just orientate people to what it's like to work at Podimo, a bit more about the kind of data stack? Just give us that context of the organization, maybe.
Yeah, so from the data stack perspective, Podimo is a very Google heavy company, which is something I prefer as well. So like all the ground laying data is obviously stored in the BigQuery environment. On top of that, we have the Looker to build the self-service part of data. I think self-service is more than just dashboards in its way. We have DBT, and then what my team is mostly using is Python or R to like do the more static visualizations and running through the data and all of those kind of things. So, but it is a very, very Google heavy company, Podimo.
There you go. That's really good. And so, I mean, in fact, you're using R, there you go. You really are doing some stats right there. There you go. Like someone who preferentially chooses R.
Yeah, you get the for in my team, like it's not like we say, do you have to use Python or you have to use R? It's basically about finding the right person. And if one wants to use R and one wants to use Python, it's no big deal. But most people are using Python. But we have a few things running in R because R obviously has more statistical features in one kind, or if you have really been into the academic version of statistics, R is the get-go. You usually stick around with what you enjoy with, so it makes sense in that way.
That's cool. That's definitely going to appeal to some people who are stuck using Tableau when they prefer to use something else. I can tell you, a lot of people out there jealous of the fact you let them pick their tool. We're going to get into more about your team particularly, but just tell us how the data organization is structured, like how you're one of a few different teams running data basically at Podimo. So tell us how that works, and we can then go into more your world.
Yeah, so data at Podimo is based on three different legs or three different divisions. We have so the entire data team is 20 plus people, spread evenly across the three branches that we have. First branch is AI, who are mainly working as like implementing AI solutions into our app, like recommendations, algorithms, and all of those kind of things. Then we have a BI team, which is responsible for like the whole tooling phase, what tools we should use from the BI angle, how the data is being processed, making sure that we have the correct dashboards in place. And they're also driving the self-service out of the company, making sure that whenever you have a specific number you can get it quite instantly. And then the third part is obviously my team, insights and analytics. And we are obviously focused solely on looking at the data and trying to derive as many insights and recommendations as possible we can do. And we support the entire company from product, content, growth, and the local markets by doing deep dives, making sure that we have for each area the right type of like metrics that are both influenceable, but also that they are connected to our overall company goals as such. And then we cross-pollinate each other within these various disciplines like growth, content, marketing, and making sure that we actually make like more company-wide recommendations as well about what we should do as a company.
And this is what we're looking to on this episode, right? What does it look like when you're basically living and dying by the ability to drive insights to the organization rather than just providing the data and providing the kind of the operational reporting? And this is it's an amazing thing. And I'm not sure it's not a typical thing to see this split out. Most people who are doing BI maybe do analytics as well. There's a separate function doing this. Tell us how that. Before we dig into the nuts and bolts, tell us how the team was formed. Was it a thing that that became obvious was needed separately? Was it a spark of an idea of yours or the founders to like say, no, we need this as part of the way we do data to make it a standalone thing just focused on value?
I think actually it started already when I was hired because my manager here, who is our chief data officer, he's very much a person who like listens to people, what they think. So already in the recruitment process, I was quite clear that my profile was more in the more deep side research of things and giving recommendations. So obviously there was a match from the beginning. And then at that time, it was a little bit more, how you should say, loose. It was a startup. So yeah, we can get you in. You have a great profile. You have some good experience for Podimo that we are interested in. So let's see what we can do here and see if it's a match. And it turned out to be a match. So I think I always was granted that type of freedom to really see what I wanted to do and how my role should behave. And then we just started adding people, and then people really saw like, oh, this is really bringing value to the company. Now we are in a different position, like where is feedback like, oh, we need more recommendations. It's not like we need more dashboards. That obviously is a thing that, but it's not being asked by my team. It's more, okay, we need more insights. We need more actual deep dive from it, which I think is very, very cool. And I'm feeling extremely happy to be in this position that I have at Podimo.
Yeah. I mean, it's great the organization knew this was the value of data from the start, that it like that insight generation is the kind of is what's going to move the business forward. Like reporting, as you know, we talk about operational clarity a lot. Getting a consistent, clear view of performance is essential. So there is a need for BI, 100%, but it's then how you take that and drive insights from it. So, I mean, there's so much I want to talk to you about here. One of I guess the simplest thing is like, how do you go about doing it? What's an example or a means to actually deliver insights that actually change the game? Like, what is that workflow? How does that? I'm not even sure it's obvious to some people what it even looks like as a workflow from end to end.
No, I think like a lot of the things, actually, I can't really quantify it, but a lot of the projects that we are doing and the things that we're looking into is not an actual request from someone. It's something that we have seen somewhere, or something we as a team think is missing, that this is probably something we should look more deeper into, and that's how it starts. And then we'll see. Sometimes you have to be a little bit wary to not go down the full explorative rabbit hole, which you can where you don't have any insights.
Yeah,
There is
sure.
like us steering what we should look into. But then obviously we have like the company goals, so we have like company themes, which are obviously phrased in the more like business manner. We should grow with this percentage or whatever. Then it becomes like, okay, if we take that actual strategic decision made by the leadership team, what are the data points that we can probably dig out, and what are the suggestions we can come up with to actually support that?
Yeah.
Which is also thing. And we also have like an ongoing discussion with the lead team always, where we like both share what we're working on, also share our insights to making sure that they actually happen and become actions in the company as well. And like the CEO, we meet him once a month with a larger data team to discuss our planning and just keeping an eye on we're actually doing the right type of stuff as well. But with that being said, there is always the explorative freedom in this on how we tackle problems.
And I guess that freedom is the fun, right? I mean, we all, as I say, I always say that we all get into data, or like you, fall into data by accident because we love the fact we can solve problems. And the fact that you can do that is obviously the main benefit. I'm assuming it sounds like you've got quite a lot of freedom to find things that then you can put forward as suggestions.
Yeah,
you're not
totally say that. Yes.
And then, but then what? Yeah, go on. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, like, that's the benefit, the freedom that you have, particularly not being given requests. But what's the negative side of this? Where do you have to make sure that you're delivering? What else do you have to make sure they'll make it fully rosy? There obviously are things which make the job difficult for you.
Sorry, we can probably cut that out. No, but like obviously a challenge in all this is there are things, and we should first of all mention that we do get requests as well. Can you look into what happened to this so we can do this better the next time? Like,
yeah, sure.
You're doing an experiment. How can we actually then improve on the next iteration? What are the suggested steps you can see in the data? Maybe not just from the results from the experiments, but also from an additional deep dive, etc., to make it look even better. So that is obviously the direct task. On the more open-ended questions that we have with the team, I think that the main challenge, as I was alluding to earlier, is this: do not go into the explorative rabbit hole. Sometimes you have to say, okay, this was fun digging into this data and going through it, but there is nothing actionable we can make of it, or it can be that the actions that we see do not have the impact that we need it to have, or something like that. You will fall into that, and
Sure.
obviously we need to prove our worth based on the recommendations we give. So that is obviously a trade-off, like spending enough but not too much time on each task is a real challenge. But I think that goes for all analytics in general.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. As we discussed many times in this podcast, the temptation to just answer the question the business asks means that you at least know they value giving them some way, but you're also capping your limit, the value you can bring, because if they aren't asking good questions, you're not going to give them good value. The flip side is, if you're given flexibility to go get value, you've got to go deliver it, and you live and die by the recommendations you make. And I guess this is a thing where you've developed trust over time. You mentioned that you meet the CEO every month. You obviously work closely with different parts of each department. I'm assuming that you're plugged in basically very closely. I guess, is that something which has grown over time, and how have you delivered trust or increased it?
That's a very good question. Actually, obviously, I meet like with senior stakeholders from the lead team on a weekly basis, to always make sure that I am on top of things, and also that we can provide things in the product org, for instance, as well as in other parts of the company. The more senior people in my team, they also function as embed. So if you think about like a product squad as such, there is like one product manager, there is one lead designer, there is also one of my senior product analysts working collaborative, like setting the roadmap and stuff like that. So they always feel like they're close to what we're doing. We always provide as much visibility as we can about what we're working with, and either you get a thumbs up and a thumbs down, which I think is great. But I think it's important in these cases to like share your ideas, what you're working on, and the initial results as early as possible. That is how I would say the best way of actually gaining trust.
Totally. So you're giving them a chance. You're making it you're making it a collaborative problem solve rather than just providing things without any real context. That actually reminds me a lot. We actually did an interview with Connor from Clio, which if you're watching, you can go back to count.co/MTN to find this, where he talks in a very similar way of embedded analysts into product squads as a way of maximizing the value and blurring the lines between the data and the actual business context, and making that a wonderful way to work. So check that out as well if you're watching, to get more on that kind of model and how that can look. I think that makes total sense, though. Like the way to just leaning in, being shoulder to shoulder with the business, helping them, thinking, having complete understanding of what's really going on. So you're informing your hypotheses, informing your thinking as you're in the guts of an analysis is just the best way to do it.
Yeah, and
you
do
mentioned
it early as well. I like, this is the idea we want to look into, and sometimes already in the ideation phase, like people can say, okay, that's probably not the best thing. We probably believe we should look into this more, or something else, or you should try to fudge it a little bit. Okay, makes sense. So there's always the ongoing discussion.
Totally. I mean, it's back to the idea that if you to basically get the business to think through the best questions, you want to have the data people and the business context together at the start of the process as much as you possibly can. So you just haven't got that disconnect, which leads to inefficiency, leads to missed work and suboptimal time spent on the wrong problems. Ultimately, I think that's just a generally great principle in general, to just be as close as you can to the decision, so the data and context are not separate silos, but actually are one thing. One thing I want to pick up with you mentioned earlier at the start about how your team also helps the business understand the metrics. You're not just about finding ideas. You're also saying like you're shaping the metrics that matter and mapping that. Can you go into a bit more detail about what that means and how you do that, and how that then feeds back into the AI and into the sort of the BI team as well, how you work with them?
So when we are setting up metrics, when we do that, we obviously have a company goal, whatever that might be. Like for instance, we need to grow the paying subscriber base, and then we need to focus together with like a product manager to understand, okay, the part of the product we're currently working on in this squad, how can we actually influence that? And that becomes a little bit of a data sciencey exercise to actually understand which is the best metric for actually influencing the overall business objectives that we have. And then obviously you can think of it as a metric tree, like you have one North Star metric and then you have supporting metrics. But if they move in the right direction, we can always say that we are having a positive impact on the overall business goals, whatever they might be at that point in time, which I think is important also when you run experiments, etc., because then you can actually also combine that specific increase of a North Star metric to actual business value. So you can actually do that translation as well.
Yeah. Obviously, as you can imagine, we're big fans of metric trees at Count. So you're speaking to the converted there. And I think also, like, it's just allows that simplicity of connection to outcome, which is just really powerful. It's also just a really amazing problem solving mechanism, right? A metric tree as a way to break a KPI down at a low level is also just a great way to explain what you're talking about. That MECE kind of mutually exclusive, collective, exhaustive way of breaking a problem down is just another great mechanism for this.
Yeah, you should always, when you have a complex problem, like in Sweden, we have a saying that you shouldn't eat the elephant all at once. You should eat it in small pieces. And that's basically what it is about, like understanding the small nuts and bolts that you can actually influence.
That's absolutely right. I mean, so back to that, which I think is a really important talk about skill set. I'm assuming that kind of breaking things down is a kind of fundamental way that you and your team work, just that critical thinking, that logical problem solving, breaking the problem down. To people who are listening who are like, I want to do this. I want to do more of this. This is why I wanted to get into data in the first place. And I'm still stuck doing dashboarding and I want to help build my team maybe more into that direction and help coaches to get there. Like, what are the skills that differ for your team than maybe the BI team or elsewhere that you've been? Like, what are the skills that you're hiring for maybe that like really stand out as important?
No, but I think like when I'm in recruiting processes, I think I pay a lot of weight onto the more soft skills. Like, because if you think about, first of all, it's obviously about understanding the problem. Like, if someone gives you a business problem, how can you actually translate that into an analytical question that you can then work with the data that we have available to actually solve? So be able to show that you have that mindset of actually translating that into actual analytical question is key one. But then there is also the whole thing about like communication and like being able to like prove a point with what everyone talks about these days is data storytelling. Like being able to actually produce a whole story with data is very, very powerful if you want to move something and make sure how everything fits together. So I think those soft skills are way more important than being like very, very good at a specific Python package or whatever. And I think that's also why I don't care if my team is using R or Python or something else, because what actually matters is the outcome, and the outcome is more shaped of your soft skill in my team than your actually hard data coding skills. With that being said, you always the basic understanding of statistic and mathematical methods, but the soft skills are more important than hard skills in my team, I would say.
I think that's just only going to be a very resilient way to hire anyway. In the way the world is going, where the ability to write SQL or Python is getting abstracted away. So statistics and then the ability to communicate is always going to be the skill which is going to matter more and more and more over the next few years and definitely in a decade. That makes total sense. We're running out of time, but this has been an amazing. I want to get to a few other questions we've had. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is just what advice do you have to people getting to data or early in their career that you think would have helped you as you got started?
Yeah, it's actually an advice I got a few years in my career, where someone told me, Jimmy, remember that a great data scientist never says, aha, I found it. He always say, that's odd. Because what it actually means is that sometimes you get this result and it's the best result you could wish for. It shows so much impact, whatever it is. But it's so much better to go back, take on your thinking hat and say, okay, does this result really, really make sense? Do not jump into conclusions. Try to just dig a little bit deeper in the data or take a step back to actually see if the result that you're given actually makes sense. Maybe there was a problem with the sampling or anything. I think early on in the career, it's very, very easy to striving to get to those aha moments in a way.
I love that. I think that's just playing back what you said. It's the idea that you don't want anything to be surprising. The art of storytelling is the art of making something seem so blatantly obvious rather than being surprised where there's ambiguity. Like, it may be powerful, but actually you kind of want the person you're receiving information to make it seem like the most obvious thing in the world, and then they can take an action because it's the obvious thing to do. So you've got to have that back work done, that storytelling told. That's cool. I love that. As you know, on our podcast, we get a community, our community of data leaders. If you go to count.co/MTN, you can find out how to be part of our community, a part of this kind of community of data leaders trying to change value from data. I've got a question from someone, Jimmy. I done this in advance. I mean, about an hour ago, to be fair, from someone who wanted to know from you that when we're speaking to, they want to know this. They said, consumer data sets are fascinating in how they show human behavior. For example, the famous Spotify controversial campaign when they literally put really odd human behavior up on the wall as an advertising campaign. How tempting is it just to explore? It sounds like it's quite tempting, given what you said earlier, that you can go down the rabbit hole too much.
Yeah, thankfully, there is no way of like actually in our data sets pinning down who the individual is, which is fantastic. Obviously, I would say like you will always, when you work with like behavioral data, find edge cases. You will always find interesting behavior or that a few or a couple of people have in a way that can come across to you in a like unsupervised clustering method or whatever. But somehow I think like it's important to also look at it and see like, is this just something that is going on that you can disregard? Or is this actually a behavior of users who have figured something out that they are after? So I think you need to like look at it from both angles, because it is tempting, but it can also give you some ideas to do it. But also do not go into the explorative rabbit hole.
I've got to say, and I used to work at Tesco, which obviously in its own way has an amazing data set of human behavior, people buying certain things at certain times, certain demographics. It was very easy to find really cool things like, there's a real spike in people buying bananas on every third Thursday of the month from this particular shop. But the question, I guess there's a kind of a algorithmic, we make sure we have bananas, make sure the algorithm can pick up that spike repeatably. But in reality, what you're going to do with that information, it's interesting, but you've got to make sure you can operationally deliver against that insight effectively. And I'm not sure telling the store manager that was going to do much to change behavior in the operation. So I get that. There's a balance between what you can do something exciting with and what's an oddity. It's also what makes it fun. They're always fun data sets to work with humans, because humans are fascinating, much more interesting than widgets off a factory line. So it's a cool place to be. I said before, I'm very jealous of the role you have. I think you've got an amazing role, and it's a role which I think everyone in data should be doing more of. It's the role we all want to do. It's just how can you help make sure you're delivering the operational clarity, and then you can start to problem solve in the right areas. I think it's a really exciting job. So thanks for talking us through it. Thanks for being able to share a bit your world, share the pros and the cons, talk through the skills that matter. It's been a really great time.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Ollie. It was a pleasure.